I'm sitting over here, and I'm fucking thinking, and I had a flash of my mind. Here you are, you can't get your money from Larry, and you're not going to. I hate to fucking disillusion you. This cocksucker, what kind of a fucking guy? He couldn't wait for John to die to take the car.
So here's the proof, huh? Give the story because it's better than the truth, huh? Allegories will keep between me and you, huh? We get coins, never scraps. See this a Bitcoin getting cat. So here's the proof, huh? Give the story because it's better than the truth, huh? Allegories will keep between me and you, huh? We get coins, never scraps. See this a Bitcoin getting cat. So started federal, grabbed a Colombo, see proof of work, I made it legible. Move out to cyber, was keeping crimes off of the web for you. Started a special group, yeah, I went private. Fell in love with Bitcoin and started mining. That's when I started shining. Getting green, dropping gems. Rocking the comic club, got them sent. They laugh, popping limbs. Give them life, here's the boost. Gotta put in the work, here's the proof. So here's the proof, huh? Give the story because it's better than the truth, huh? Allegories will keep between me and you, huh? We get coins, never scraps. See this a Bitcoin getting cat. So here's the proof, huh? Give the story because it's better than the truth, huh? Allegories will keep between me and you, huh? We get coins, never scraps. See this a Bitcoin getting cat. So join, get it back.
Don't fucking talk to me next time! He's gonna kill me! Please! Oh, you worried about them, not us? He's gonna kill me!
All right, welcome. Episode 11, Vinny's Proof of Work podcast. Welcome, Michael Loftus.
What an intro. What an intro. It's like we witnessed an entire journey. There's so much, holy smoke. I'm an emotional wreck just from the intro. What could possibly happen now? I think next you get on some kind of SpaceX program. You go to what are you gonna do? You're gonna go to the space station? You're an astronaut?
I'm gonna go to space station. Yeah, no, thanks, man. Yeah, that intro was fun to make and fun to put together, and now it's like my scrapbook for life. So when I die, I could just give him that intro to my kids and grandkids and be like, "Here's Vinny in a nutshell."
That's what they'll do. When you're dead, they'll slowly close the lid. Everybody will be crying. And then cue the music.
Exactly. Yeah, I take it. But welcome, Michael Loftus, first time on the show. And I appreciate you coming in. For those of you that don't know, Michael Loftus is a comic writer. You've got your own. You can make your own intro video. That'd be pretty impressive by my standards.
Mine doesn't have the wacky left turn. Mine is kind of like a straight comedic shot, where yours is like FBI, Bitcoin, comedy. What?
Yeah. That's very, very true. But much to discuss today.
Yes.
You know, Mike and I met years ago at one of the comedy clubs. It might have been Governor's. Mike was in the green room one day, you know, and you could just sense sometimes when you meet other comics are weird people generally. And especially, as you said, coming from a very different world into comedy when I was like 37, you know, I can kind of sense from people in the green room that I think are fucking crazy or normal or somewhere right in the middle where I like to be. And I always got that impression from the first time that I met you, a very grounded, down-to-earth individual. And nothing that I've seen in the years since we've known each other since then has changed my mind of that.
I think that's more of a byproduct of just being on planet Earth a little longer. Because like when, you know, in your 20s and you're doing stand-up or you're out doing anything, you're like, like it's all surprising. By the time you're 30 something, you're like, all right, that guy's a dick. I got no time for that loser. Screw that.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And when you come in, if you're coming in late into that kind of thing, there's somewhat of a fraternity mentality that's at play, that you're like, all right, I have a certain tolerance and I totally respect, especially coming in late. I had a lot of respect for the people doing it their entire careers. But at the same time, you're like, I'm not a child. So like, if someone's going to be a dick to me, there's only so far I'm going to go to bridge that gap, to be friendly. And then eventually I'm going to say, you know, you're not my time because you're not worth my time. I still leave here and have a life. I have a family and things going on that, like I can't be bothered with that. But you were very, very nice from the start, from the first time that I met you. And then it's always nice when you meet other down to earth, what I consider grounded people, and then you watch your comedy and they're hysterical. Cause then you're like, all right, good. Cause there are plenty of nice people that don't have the other part of it. And you're like, I just wish they were funny.
Those are usually the nicest ones. Like hanging in the green room, and they're very interesting, and they've got some weird hobby, and their life is just like, you're like having a great time, just like talking to them, and like, wow, that's so, and then they go on stage and they eat it, and you're like, ooh,
I know.
Ooh,
yeah,
this is now going to be awkward.
Yeah, now, there's a certain extent that our relationship's going to take us now.
But I would, you know what? I would prefer that. I would prefer that than the comic who can't stop. That to me is exhausting. I have very little time for the dude in the green room who's just a nonstop joke machine, needs to be the center of attention. Hey, just like, dude, that's exhausting. It's exhausting.
Yeah, especially on you're depending on the type of show too, especially if you're just trying to get in there and do a spot and not be emotionally drained by whatever shenanigans this person wants to draw you into.
It's
but as you said,
funny, dude. There's a one of my favorite comedy clubs on planet Earth, and it's one of the best. It's called the Hermosa Beach Comedy and Magic Club. Fantastic showroom. The owner treats it's just magnificent. The audiences are great.
It's awesome.
There's I don't have a bad thing to say about this club. And they do these birthday shows. Like, hey, the club is turning 22, so they'll have 22 comics on a night for the week of their birthday shows. And dude, I'm talking about Chris Rock, Jerry Seinfeld, Jay Leno. It's just like heavy hitter after heavy hitter. And occasionally that's how like new comics get in. So like, we only have 18 comics. We're going to try some new guys out. That's how I got in.
Yeah.
I did a birthday show, but it's crazy, man. You'll have like, Seinfeld backstage, and he's a scientist. He literally, he's going to do these jokes that he knows works. He's working on this joke. And, you have some young comic in there or some idiot just like, hey, doing shakalaka, hey, knock, knock, ding, 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 ding. And you can just see like all the guys who've been around the block, we all just kind of like look at each other and like, whoo, here we go. And then slowly a comic will get up and we'll just kind of
move or leave. Yeah, there's definitely a balance between that. I think that happens a lot. So it's funny because the last time I saw you was a month or so ago. We were at Brokerage and you were in there with Kevin. It's okay if I talk about this, right?
Sure.
Yeah, you were in there with Kevin and Kevin James and to catch a show or whatever. And there was and you guys were very discreet. You were in the kind of corner or whatever, but definitely a sense. And this again comes, I think, with the age thing and hopefully the wisdom thing and the perspective thing, was that the people that were on the show were like, I'm like, listen, this is not going to matter one way or another. Like, don't put too much weight on this. Like, Kevin's going to come up to you after and be like, you're the guy we've been looking for. Like, it's just not going to happen that way. So go do your set like you would do it anyway.
Yes.
And try to tune it out. And there's so much about stand-up that is mental, that is about you controlling the emotion of the moment, you controlling, your performance anxiety and all those things that you want to do, that it's really hard when you're younger to flush that out of your system and go out and have a set. So one of the guys that went on that night, I don't think he did. In fact, I think you guys probably coincidentally left like right, like 2 minutes in.
Yeah.
And and it's whatever. And I'm sure it was mostly coincidental or this or that. But of course it was like, I should have done this. I'm like, believe me, they probably had to go. And it was like, it's nothing to do with that. And
yes,
you didn't wreck the opportunity of your lifetime.
But like, ultimately, this is what I like about New York. This is what I like. New York stand up much better than Los Angeles. And this goes to that. Like, we were helping a buddy out, a mutual friend of ours.
He was very nice guy.
A mutual friend of ours is like, dude, haven't done stand up in a while. I want to get back into it, but I don't want to do old stuff, you know. And it's that thing. It's like there's a recipe, in my opinion. All of it's just my opinion. You do stuff that's tried and true. You sneak in the new stuff,
Right.
you know, so it has its best chance. And then you do some more tried and true. It's like a 70-30 mix. So, you know, our buddy's like, yeah, I'm going to be doing stand up. And we had done McGuire's. And then it was like brokerage.
Yep.
Right, was the next one up. And so we're like, yeah, dude, we'll come out, we'll watch, you know, we'll be friends. I love it. I love the camaraderie. I like hanging out. I like talking about comedy and people going, oh, you should do that bit. Or I thought, you know, it's just a much better melting pot of goodness. So yeah, there's nothing personal. We watched our buddy, we made some notes, and then like, let's get out of here. And while it's fresh, so it had nothing to do with the person on stage. Like while it's fresh, hey, I want to tell you this, and oh, you could have done that, and that was good. And but that's like I have to think it's kind of a rare occurrence for brokerage or governors where now conversely in Los Angeles, dude,
all the time.
That's like almost every show.
Wow.
Almost every show there's someone in the audience. Like you have to bring your A game every single time. And it is so
that's rough.
Oh, dude, it's so cutthroat. It's so just absolute. Everybody has blinders on.
Yeah.
Everybody. And like, I come up to like governors, you know, and I'm talking to other comics and they don't know me from anybody and I don't really know them, but we're talking backstage. And then you see somebody set and you're like, oh, dude, that part was really funny. You know what else? You could tag it with this if you want, you know, just people are giving me tags and going, oh, I thought you were going to do this. Oh, that's a good idea. It's just a much better like support group. But in LA, man, you got blinders on.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I gotta crush. I have to destroy. I got no time to help people out. And it's very
that is rough. That's not a great,
that's
not a great environment. Also, it stifles you know, for me, it'd be stifling because a lot of the writing I do happens on stage. Like you said, I believe in that combination of, I look at it like credibility. If you go out, you get laughs through your tried and true, you've now established credibility baseline. That's why I never talked about the FBI stuff on stage until very, very recently, relatively speaking, very recently, because that wasn't something I wanted to base my credibility on. I wanted to base my credibility on just being a comic, getting laughs, and then trying the new stuff. When I started talking more about the FBI, I had the credibility to carry the weight of that sort of announcement. I still get the bullshit comments and I get people after the show like, you really weren't doing that, but you have to win them over first with the tried and true. And then you work in some of the other stuff and you're cashing in on that credibility, especially if it's a new joke, right? Where it's not perfected. They give you the benefit of the doubt because you've already established you're funny through the tried and true. And like you said, going back and forth, if you're looking at it like every set is an audition, every set's an audition, like what you're describing, that'd be painful for me because I would be tempted to just go all the time with the same things and then be like, but then where's the growth of the material? You can go right, but afterwards, but then you see someone and you go, well, I'm not going to try that new thing today. That guy's sitting there. If this bombs, it's going to throw the whole set off. And again, this also goes to the belief of the understanding of that, that these are all, it's very unlikely that one performance is going to make or break anything. Just like in life, your success is usually an amalgamation of your performance over time. Your success isn't like that one time you did really well. What's your season, right? Like, are you 11-2? Are you 12-1? Or you're 7-6? You don't have to be 12-0, 13-0. You just have to have a body of work that says, yeah, this is a person who's reliable over time. This is a person who's consistently funny. There's going to be those things at the margin. Whereas younger comics are like, my whole life is riding on this set. And if they bomb, their whole week, the whole month could be ruined. And you're like, put it in perspective. You're going to have 1,000 more of these before you even get that right.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. Like I have like geographic rules to stand up. Like if I'm going into the city, if I'm doing the Cellar or Stand Up New York, that's a crush zone.
Mm-hmm.
That's one where you got to be just like, I'm all
Best
business.
Stuff. Yeah.
And then like Governors, McGuire's. Yeah. Like when I'm on the marquee, boom, 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 boom. But you also have to always be working on new stuff. And that's how LA was for me too. If I was at the Melrose Improv, the Comedy Store, the Laugh Factory, I'm clocking in. That's work time. Boom, boom, boom. Do not mess around. And then it would always be like the Ice House in Pasadena, the Irvine Improv, Hermosa Beach Comedy. If I was far enough away geographically, I felt good about working on, just like I'm
Yep.
You always want to entertain the audience, but I'm like, okay, I can try a bunch of new stuff here. So then check this out. This happened to me years ago, and I hadn't thought about it in a long time until we're having this conversation. This is probably 7 years ago, and I'm using my geographic rules, right? Like in town, you're working.
Yeah.
Out.
Yeah.
I get a letter in the mail from Disney, and Disney said that they had been sending out like secret shoppers to comedy clubs.
Okay.
They had sent them to every club, but they were going everywhere. And they had seen me do a set at like the Ice House in Pasadena. I had no idea they were in the audience. No, but like they thought you were great. So we want to bring you in for a meeting with our executives. Okay. And it's just like, God, you never know. You never know who's in the audience.
Yeah, but I think it's better to go through and not know. And
yes.
Do your thing than to get all worked up about, because if you had known that, you might have changed something. Who knows? You might have gone a direction you thought would they like and they didn't. So that's kind of like when I find that there's people in the audience that know me, I always like to learn that after my set. I don't want to be thinking about, now I got to run it through a potential filter. And is there a joke about this and that affects you or this? I just want to do my thing. And then afterwards you come out and I'm like, oh, great. But before the thing, it's just an unnecessary sort of thing I have to think about that I don't. So moving along from comedy, because I know there's a lot of things that, and you're on a timeline today, but a couple of things I wanted to get your take on is the Twitter purchase of by Elon, and what are your thoughts on all of that and how you think that's going to play out online? Because I'm surprised that so many people thought that Elon's purchase of Twitter, the impact would be immediate, and you have people like taking their clothes off in the street, and I'm like, it's going to take some time, and they're getting banned, and you're like, it's going to take some time for these rules to settle in. Like, it's exciting, but this isn't an overnight thing, and I think it's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, it is the 7-layer dip of censorship, and to me there's only one thing that matters, and that is I want somebody to dissect the algorithm. I want someone to dissect what was the day-to-day operations at Twitter. There's no question in my mind. Like, I do jokes about everything. Lately, I've been doing a lot of political stuff. And in terms of, I'm a small government fellow. You could say that. I'm a small government. So there's no doubt in my mind I've been suppressed across every platform. There's and it's the algorithm. Like, people don't realize how far AI has come in terms of, like, YouTube, for example. They have an automatic closed captioning thing. When you put a video on YouTube, it'll automatically close caption it. So if you say the wrong thing, if you say this is just me having put up hundreds of videos on YouTube. If you mention certain people by name, if you say the wrong word, you'll be demonetized. And they're definitely dialing some videos up and dialing some down. And the same is very true of Twitter. Dude, I was on after Elon Musk bought Twitter, and the sky started falling, and there was a great weeping and gnashing of teeth because it was going to be freedom of speech. I was gaining hundreds of followers. Like, I would do every once in a while, I'm on that show, Gutfeld on Fox. Yeah. And after an appearance on Gutfeld, I'd pick up maybe 50 people on Twitter, which seemed insane. Yeah. Because he averages like 2 million people. And this last appearance, I was just on Gutfeld right after Elon Musk took over Twitter, and I got close to 1,000.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's your A-B
Yeah.
comparison. But that is, to me, it's the biggest story, but it's all for nothing unless they can get into this algorithm that is how does it work and how do we stop it? Because it's to me it's criminal, man. It's and I'm talking legit criminal here with the suppression on Facebook, the suppression on YouTube, suppression on Google, suppression on Twitter, all this stuff. It's like the people in charge are defining what the reality is, because everybody checks their phone and they go, oh, what's the big story? What's the big, oh, everybody's talking about this. So they can really steer.
Yeah, they can. It goes, and it goes
voting base.
In some instances, it goes beyond steering. They're generating the topics of conversation. Like I was just talking to someone this weekend that was in the room, Ukrainian, and we were talking about how 3 weeks ago, a month ago, nobody could find Ukraine on the map in this country if you told them. Now suddenly people have that in their profile pics. Hospitals are hanging Ukrainian flags. I see it on bumper stickers. When I see that, I'm not saying that there isn't a legitimate reason to be supportive. I'm saying, look how easily manipulated you are for the cause du jour. And so you have something that was no one cared about, and suddenly becomes this focus because of social media. And the problem is, and you used the word criminal, and that's the problem, is that this type of technology, it wasn't anticipated that when the internet had come along, it was phenomenal because it felt like it really gave access and freedom to information and access to information, and was obviously a tool for the First Amendment. And then what ended up happening was people put up websites and it's sort of decentralized and dispersed. And then naturally what happens is people come along, create products like MySpace and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and it starts to become funneled into a handful of places that are actually the only real platforms that matter. So, but by definition, by law, these companies are private companies and can have terms of service. You can decide to create an app that only caters to people who lean right, who lean left. And there really is technically nothing legally that can be done unless you start taking in people as a platform and saying, well, we're going to steer towards one and editorialize certain people and not editorialize the other. And that's where they can get legally in trouble. But there is a massive protection. There are massive protections in place for places like Twitter that can say, hey, the First Amendment applies to government restrictions on suppression of free speech, does not apply to a private company. And what was hysterical was that we were reminded of this fact for the last 15 years until somebody bought the company they don't like. And now suddenly it's a big threat to freedom of speech, a big threat to democracy. Well, how come it wasn't when Jack was in charge? Well, we all know the answer to that, because the type of censorship that was going on benefited people who lean a certain direction and cost people who lean in the opposite direction. And now that they think that may get reversed. To your point about the algorithm, and this is something that Jack's been pretty vocal about since he's left Twitter. And I think in part this is Bitcoin's influence on Jack, because he's getting more heavily involved in Bitcoin, which is the whole premise of Bitcoin being rules without rulers, where you have code in place that establishes the rules of the game that not even the government can change. And we have to find a way to translate that to social media platforms and say, here are the rules. The rules for social media are the algorithms. The rules are such that they don't care one way or the other. If there's a rule about leaking publishing stolen or leaked data, and we're going to talk about the decision leak in a minute, hopefully. But if there's a rule about we can't publish the documents from Joe Biden's laptop because they might have been taken illegally or without authorization, well, then when something else comes along, that rule should be applied equally. And the way Bitcoin's designed, it's censorship resistant because nobody has control over that. You hit go, and the algorithms that are in place, for lack of a better analogy, but the rules that are in place for Bitcoin, the protocol doesn't care. If you try to transmit money on Bitcoin, it doesn't say, Michael Loftus, he leans right, we're going to reject this transaction, or we're going to deprioritize this transaction. As long as you have the keys to that Bitcoin and you're sending it legitimately, there's not an entity in the world that can stop that from happening.
Well,
just like if you could tweet
the next
something.
thing that's coming, dude. That's the next thing that's coming. Klaus Schwab the super rich, I'm gonna decide. He's one of the high and mighty people who, you know, they set the narrative.
Oh, the IMF. You're
Yes.
talking about the World Bank? Yeah. And that's why they're scared of Bitcoin, is because Bitcoin they cannot control. And they're terrified of it.
That is problem number one for them. And they're working on a solution.
Yep.
So
and
it's terrifying.
Yep. And this is the thing.
You see, like what just happened in Canada with the truckers, the freedom truckers,
absolutely,
who were protesting.
GoFundMe.
They just went in and go, yeah, you guys don't have any money. And that's the terrifying thing about digital currency. I love it about Bitcoin because of the blockchain and all that stuff, and it's decentralized. That's wonderful. But if you switch to a digital currency, there will be. It's like you'll go to pay for your 2-liter.
Oh, you're talking about a central bank digital currency. Horrible idea. A central bank generated digital currency is a tool, as a surveillance tool for the government. There's no other way to put it. It is the antithesis of Bitcoin. They're trying to take the most powerful parts about Bitcoin, the privacy, the decentralized nature, the fact that they can't control and destabilize the money by printing more of it. And then they're going to convert it to a central bank digital coin that takes all the worst things and adds it into it. Well, we control it. We can censor it. You can go to the store and we can decide you're not going to buy steak today. And your coin is no longer good for steak. Or you voted a certain way, so you're no longer allowed to see this movie anymore or participate online. So that you're right. The war is coming, and it's been coming. What I love about it is that people are starting to finally realize on both sides that where this is headed. And going back to the point about Jack is, I think Jack's regret, reading from some of his tweets in the past few months, is that I think his idea fundamentally about Twitter was about freedom of expression. And I think he got bogged down and overtaken by the woke mob to then regulate the content to a point where I don't even think he was comfortable with it, and has acknowledged many mistakes that they made. And now is, I think, looking and excited about someone like Elon coming in, because Elon coming in means that as an engineer, he's going to look at this programmatically. And like you said, let's look at the algorithms. There's no reason they should be secret. The rules of Bitcoin are open source. The world can audit it. The rules of Twitter should be open source. And don't tell me it's a private company. You've gone beyond the private company. When you're the number one platform on the planet, especially for the United States, where people can go into the town square and express their opinions, and you have the decision to go anything from banning them totally, to shadow banning them, to dialing them back, to monitor, to taking away monetization. We've gone beyond just, well, it's a private company. It is something that the rules should be absolutely transparent across the board. And so if someone could say there's 56 genders, someone could say there's 2. That's the rules. Those are the rules. And someone like Elon, I think, is gonna, when people are freaking out about it, I'm like, wow, it's funny to see people afraid of actually having rules that apply equally to everybody. That's all everybody wants. That's all people like me want. That's all people like you want. That's all that Elon wants.
I think that the vast majority of Americans and people on the planet Earth just want to live in reality. And that's all I want. Like, I don't care what you believe. I really don't care, unless it's going to be a threat to me and my family. But like, you certainly don't want calls for violence and organizing attacks and stuff like that.
Child pornography. Of course, we all agree that those things should not be on the platform. But those are well-established rules. Those are well-established rules.
Yeah.
You know?
So I find it very interesting that Elon Musk gets a hold of Twitter. And I just did a video about this at my YouTube channel, the Loftus Party. So Elon Musk buys Twitter, and I think a week later, all of a sudden the federal government's like, hey, we need a Ministry of Truth. We need a disinformation bureau. Holy crap. That was a little quick on the buzzer there. That was a little quick on the buzzer.
It was, and I do believe so. 2 things. One, there was some talk of this in the months preceding, but that doesn't mean, I think they all understood that their stranglehold on places like Twitter and Google and YouTube is by far, it's not a certainty. And I think the administration understood that. So I believe that this plan for the Ministry of Truth was something that was probably in the works for a while, and then the nature of this just expedited it all. Yes. I mean, now it's like, you know, now they're gonna push hard for it, which is completely Orwellian. I was watching. I love the Twilight Zone, the original series. Rod Serling, such a genius, and the episode of the famous episode of the obsolete man, right? The librarian who comes before the state, and the state is the representative is up on his tower, and he's got everyone in there, and he's yelling at him about how he's useless, and he's a librarian, and there's no more books, and he makes a reference to God, and the state says to him, there is no God. We've proven there is no God. The state has decided there is no God. And the actor from the guy from Rocky, who's just one of my favorite actors, drawing a blank on his name,
Burgess
Meredith. He's so powerful, and he says you cannot erase God with an edict. Like, and it's shocking that something made so long ago. That's where we're at. Is that we're going to have social media decide and the government decide what is truth. There is no God. We've decided it. There are 77 genders. We decided that. We've decided that. So anyone who says the opposite now is disinformation,
yes,
and therefore subject to penalties.
Yes.
And that when this came out and I tweeted, and I wasn't being hyperbolic. It is so incredibly dangerous. This concept of a ministry of truth, this concept of a disinformation board, whatever they want to call it. It is so anti-American. It is so dangerous to freedom. It scares me that more people don't realize that. It scares me that we've been conditioned to the point where people are like, I saw some guy going, what do you like? Lies and disinformation. I'm like, who fucking decides that? You? I decide what is truth and what is lie for me and my family. I decide that. And by the way, you decided that the Biden laptop was a Russian disinformation operation, and you had 25 Intel fucking leaders of the Intel community come out and say that, and that was 100% wrong. So your track record of what you even believe is disinformation is abhorrent. And I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you to decide for me and my family what's truth. It's incredibly dangerous.
And I would argue there is no need for it. The only reason you need it is because you want to control the narrative. They keep citing Russian disinformation. Now, if you look at what Russia did back in the 2016 election, they bought some ads on Facebook. It wasn't even. It wasn't. I think it was in the tens of thousands of dollars. It wasn't even hundreds of thousands. And they were equal. They were anti-Hillary, and then they were anti-Trump. It's not like they had a clear agenda in it. They were just trying to, and then to run with this. Oh, it's Russia, Russia, Russia. We have to fight this Russian disinformation. I'd be a little bit more about a little bit worried about like China and stuff that they're doing in the real world as intense instead of the cyber world. But yeah, we have our work. We have our it's going to be an uphill battle, man. Turning people on. It's like, and it's and that's why I love joking about it, because when you tell a joke about a situation, you know, it kind of sits a little bit longer in somebody's mind, and they, you know, that was funny, but wow, he actually made a good point there. I think that was the real strength of George Carlin.
I was just going to say that.
And go on these rants, and then you're like, wow, he kind of does. That was funny, and he made a good point. And then once you start putting those little pieces together, it's much more powerful. You can have a crazy person on the street corner, and they're preaching nothing but facts. They could be preaching hardcore facts, but you're like, man, somebody shut that dude up. I don't want to hear that. That's why comedians like myself and a large group of other people were not really allowed to participate in pop culture, because they understand the power of pop culture, which is the terrifying notion for me about Disney. When Disney makes these edicts, like we're going to have half of our characters be transgender, gay, LGBTQ++, LMNOP. So now, so they know that they're like, okay, there's a behavior and we want to normalize it. And the fastest way to do that is to get to the kids. And I just don't want anybody messing with kids' minds. Like I really, like, if you're a grown-up and you want to do whatever, I don't care. Once again, I don't care. But when you start there's certain ideas that should just, I don't want anybody talking to little kids about sex at all.
Yeah, at all. Yeah. Yeah. No, I have a 9-year-old, and that used to not be a controversial topic. And it's like everything else. It comes in, these topics come in always like, it's just an alternative. It's just this. And then next thing you know, it becomes the equal. And then it becomes from the equal to superior. Right.
Mhm.
And that's what I have a problem. I got rid of cable TV probably 15 years ago, but we have like Hulu and things. And the other day, I guess the Hulu wasn't logged in, and we're watching something, and the commercials came on, and I'm looking at these commercials, and I'm like, what reality are these commercials based on? Now, I have no problem with, of course, I think commercials should be a reflection of reality. And if you're selling a product that you want to alter what the reality is, then that's fine. But when you have commercials that look like, if somebody were to watch them, you'd be like, you would think this is what real life is. You would think that every couple's an alternative couple. You would think that everybody, that the vast majority of the planet is made up of this demographic. And it's just, to me, it's bizarre, because if you're saying we want to make sure we went from making sure people were represented to then overcompensating to this point where it's become non-consistent with reality. And so when you're talking about portions of the population, let's say, are gay, portions of the population that are trans, which is a fraction, you're talking about, 5%, 1%, but the representation on pop culture is 60%, 70%, 80%. What does that do to people mentally who grow up in that, as far as what they know to be reality? It distorts reality in such a way that makes things seem very different. So then these people grow up and start running companies and doing things based on a fake reality that doesn't actually exist. And that's a fantasy world that we're creating. We're creating a fantasy world of what we want it to be, instead of going, this is where we want to be, but this is where we're at now. We have to stay grounded in reality as we dream for these other things and expand these other things. And it went from, oh, that's fine, everyone has their opinion, which I totally agree with, to now you have no longer have the right to present a counter argument. And I have to be then drawn into your reality. And if I don't ascribe to your reality, now I'm called all these names, and my whole life can be over. And that's a scary thing to say. So and this is what Twitter, going back to the Twitter thing, for people like, for people who don't understand what that is, that means there are things that people would like to say that other people like me might agree with and feel, that I can't say, because I know that if I get banned, I got to start all over and my voice is gone. And so what happens is people then go on Twitter and go, nobody thinks that way, I would see it. No, you wouldn't see it, because people like me, people like you, are constantly worried about what we're tweeting. And so we get lost in the noise of everyone else who's tweeting the thing that's popular. And it makes it seem like more people are in favor of a thing than really are, because the only voices that you're seeing are the ones who are in favor, which is why how Trump won in 2016, obviously, this idea that he was going to, 98% chance that Hillary was going to win. Yeah, because the reality didn't match up with your propaganda, your social media propaganda. Your social media propaganda was she's going to win in a landslide. But people like you and I going, I don't know. I'm hearing a lot of people on the down low saying they're fucking fed up and they're going to vote, and then it happens and they're like, how did this happen? And then everyone's like, I'm not surprised that it happened, because on the down low, people were saying they were going to do this, but the media did not want to entertain that. And so they were surprised when reality came into play. It's like, I always go back, the kid who fell out of that ride at that park, right? And he was too big. He was too big to be on the ride, and they didn't want to offend probably. And they didn't want, so they put him on a ride. They fucked with the sensor so that the thing would come down. And the problem is physics isn't woke. Like, physics wasn't woke and goes, we got a dude in here, let's hook him. Physics was like, 350 pounds, a latchet isn't closed properly. Yep, we're going to slide him right through when we hit 1.5 Gs. He's going to slide right the fuck out and die. And that's what I always look at, as reality at some point comes in and will crush all of this fiction we're living in. And it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be a splat on the asphalt.
And that is the problem. That's where it's people have been saying, I have a joke where I blame everything on the hippies, and it ultimately goes back to Hitler and yada, yada, yada. We've been able to tread water for a long time as a civilization, meaning America, this constitutional republic. You know, and people go, that music's going to lead to this, and that haircut's going to lead to that, and we all laughed and laughed and laughed. And when they passed Social Security, they're like, this is going to lead to communism, and they were right.
Yeah,
and they were right. It was always laughably funny, but now we're at the point where, like, oh wow, when reality does smack us upside the head, it's going to be horrible. And no one is prepared for that. And if you look at like Russia and Ukraine, like the rest of the world isn't playing by our woke rules.
Exactly.
Russia.
What do you think inflation is? This inflation is reality. It's not physics, it's economics. You can try to tell a supermarket owner, lower your prices, be woke, give this. It doesn't matter. The economics are the economics. It costs more for him to stock his store. He's charging more to get it back. His rent went up. It all feeds in. And like you said, it's not going to matter when the rest of the world, when reality is, again, a pilot and an airplane. A airplane doesn't care the color of the skin of the pilot. The airplane only cares if it's being operated properly. And honestly, that's all we should care about. If I'm a passenger, my family is a passenger on a plane. I don't give a shit about their politics. I don't give a shit about their ethnicity or their background. You can't tell a plane, be woke, man. This is an opportunity. We got, 2 female pilots in here. Don't crash. It doesn't care.
Yeah. And it's especially true in the military when they're like, okay, we're gonna lower the height, the requirements for the physical challenges. We got to figure out what color nail polish the trans members of the military can wear. We need to figure out the uniforms so that no one feels bad. So that's what our military is doing.
Right.
And we just got our asses handed to us by the Taliban in Afghanistan. A bunch of dudes in flip-flops running around in the back of Toyota pickup trucks whooped us.
Yep.
And then if you realize, like, China, they're like, hey, kids, you can play video games 3 hours a week. That's it.
Yeah.
And we're changing the requirements for phys ed in all across the board. We got to be tougher. And we got to celebrate masculinity. Like, China is gearing up.
Yep.
And we're over here going, isn't it cute that we can all, like, be matchy when we go into battle? It's crazy.
Yeah. There's only so much that our culture can overcome. And it's fine when we're not in these conflicts, but when viruses and plagues are released upon the planet, when military conflicts escalate, where the rubber meets the road, you have to have a group of people that are based in reality. Like, our military vehicles are going to be electric. Really? You're going to be standing with a tank waiting to charge your tank as mortars are coming in. You're like, I just need 40 more minutes to, like, that's not reality. Like, wartime, you need a mechanical device that if it is combustion based, that you can refuel, that you can get supplies to, that's tough, that we have the technology perfected. There doesn't need to be a green eco button on a fucking Sherman tank to be like, oh, I would have been there sooner to give you the ground support you needed, but I was in eco mode and I was limited to 1 mile an hour. Like, can you imagine the absurdity of it?
It's real. It's real. Biden just publicly declared that he wants every military vehicle to be climate friendly. Good luck with that. Half the time you go by the windmills, those things aren't even spinning.
Yeah. Or they're spinning too fast and they have to be disengaged, or they're broken. And again, it's the reality. Like, people always say that too about like my next car will probably be Tesla. We're getting rid of a truck. We'll probably get a Tesla. I love the technology, but I'm a realist about its limitations. But you can't have those conversations with people anymore. So when you say, well, you're not eco? Well, no. Where do you think the lithium and the batteries comes from? Where do you think the electricity from your house comes from that powers it? It doesn't just magically fall out of the sky. So I'm very realistic about the pros and cons of an electric vehicle. We will get there, believe me. But mandating that every vehicle is going to be electric in the next 2-3 years is bonkers. And we're not there yet. And the destruction of the planet, in the environment, is actually going to be, in my opinion, worse unless we do this in a very staged, realistic way. But unfortunately, the idealism of what people want the reality to be has made its way into every sector of our government. And you have people living in fantasy land who will go out and say every vehicle needs to be electric. And there's not a single person in the administration that says, hey, can I talk to you? Like, it's not ready yet. And here's why it's not ready.
Every great invention has come from outliers. It's never been from centralized government. I mean, maybe you could make an argument. Well, you go to rockets and you go to
space. Space
Germany
is probably
doing.
exactly. Space
but
is
like
probably
the light bulb, powered flight, movable print. It's all outliers. It's all outliers. Once the government says, "Hey, we're gonna fund this," things get insanely expensive. Like when the government says, like, "Hey, everybody should be able to buy a house. We're gonna back the loans." What happened there? When the government says, "Hey, everybody should be able to go to college. We're going to back the loans." Suddenly the price just goes through the roof. It doesn't work. So I want the best chance to succeed, like as a species. And like when you do privatize things, isn't it seriously? It's phenomenal. It's good news for us as humanity that, I want Jeff Bezos and the dude from Virgin Galactic and Elon Musk. I want 3 of those dudes all competing to like figure out what the next spaceship's going to be. How can I make this better? How can I dig this tunnel? How can our lives are going to get infinitely better because those guys want to make money, and you make money by selling a product that people need and makes their lives better.
The government is not good at that. No, they're terrible at that. And I would say, with rare exception, most of the things that are happening or we're doing, that's the problem. You mentioned at the beginning of this conversation about small government is people who don't understand that and believe that the government's role is to take care of you. It's like just to get them to the point to understand how backwards thinking that is. Before you could even get to the other things, you have to deprogram them to say, your rights do not come from the government. Let's start from there. These are God-given. These are inherent. These are things that the founders of this country believed that the government was the enemy in all of this, and that this Constitution and this Bill of Rights are here to restrict what they can do to you. So I find that most of the people I talk to don't even understand that basic premise. And then to say, what is it that you think the government can do better than the private sector and why? And 99% of the examples you get are nonsense. And it's been proven. And space being the latest proof that we don't even need them for that anymore. I do believe like when I have conversations with anarchists, it frustrates me a little bit because the idea that we could have evolved without some form of centralized government, I think was a long shot because I do not believe in pure anarchy. But I do believe it shouldn't be like this with government control. It should be like we're like, cavemen running around, stabbing, murdering, and religion comes along and government comes along and they try to establish rules, and it has a better overall greater effect to control people to say, get your shit together and focus. And then as these things happen, the government should start falling off. You don't need me anymore. And like a parent, you don't need me to tie your shoe anymore. You don't need me to build your roads anymore. You don't need me to pay you to get a job, because private sectors come in and figured out ways to do that better. But unfortunately, the problem with that is that it requires politicians to relinquish power and control. And this is why I get such a weird reaction on Twitter based on my comments, is people assume because of my background that I'd feel the opposite. But no, having seen it from the inside, and the Bureau, believe it or not, was actually way better than 99% of the agencies out there in terms of being responsible with money and things. And that's not saying a lot, but it's true. But the idea that when I pay my taxes and it goes to the government and I see how they spend it, that I'm comfortable with that. No, being part of that process made me very uncomfortable with that, because I realized that I'd rather have more control over where my money goes and give it to this idea of Elon Musk. Why didn't he give $43 billion to the government to solve poverty? I'm like, if money could solve poverty, it would have been solved decades ago.
Yeah.
It's the money's not the problem. The problem is the reliance on the government. The problem is drugs. The problem is mental health issues. This is a complicated issue. The problem is people living in the fucking desert. What are you going to drop in food every week with 43 billion? How many years can you do that until you run out of planes and food? So it's these people, these idea that these problems can be solved by the government, when their track record is typically they only make these problems worse, is really bizarre to me. That like, change the way you think. This isn't going to be fixed by any administration.
Well, that's the thing that's the great disconnect is like people and I don't blame them. It's like you're living in a reality where the alphabet is A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Yeah.
That's it. And we're dealing with, we're open-minded.
we
We're like,
believe that,
no,
yeah.
it goes all the way to Z. So that's right. Because you have people who think I'm well-informed. I read, but there's like this been like slow burn conditioning of, oh, the government will pay for that. The government will pay for that.
Student
Because
loans.
you never see the money. I'm telling you, our society would change overnight if everybody kept 100% of their wages. And then the government sent you a bill and they go, hey, you got to give us this money. This is going to the schools. People would see that there's no value in that. They'd go, wait a minute.
100%.
I'm giving you all this money, but my kid's getting a crappy education, and I don't want my 5-year-old to know how to masturbate. Like, what are you doing?
Exactly.
It will change overnight, but it's like it's that out of sight, out of mind, and we have to constantly remind ourselves and let people know this is a transaction. Like, I don't know how to build roads. I can't build a road. I can't maintain a road. I'm going to give the government this much money. You guys keep charge of the roads. I don't have the time to run around and catch people breaking the law. I'm going to give you this much money. I'm going to need cops. That's what it is. And right now we're paying in a lot and we're not getting back what we agreed to. So something's got to break.
And over the last how many decades, the problem is the solution in that we need more money.
Yes.
That's their solution. We're going to need more money, as a matter of fact. And there's no relationship where, we had a tree fort built a few summers ago, and the guy who came in to do it, to give us a budget, and then came back for more money, and then said, I'm going to need more for the roof. And eventually you're like, this is a scam you're running here. Like, you completely underbid this project. And at some point we fired the guy because you're like, no, the fact that you are, that you weren't able to complete this in this project means I'll never use you again. I'll never hire you again. The problem with the government is they come back and do your roads the next year. We don't have an option in that. And when you privatize it, you do have an option to say, you failed so miserably at this project, you're going to go out of business, because that's what happens to companies that aren't managed properly, and they go away, and you get better companies that do it better, more efficiently.
Do you remember the that giant earthquake in Los Angeles back in the 90s, the Northridge earthquake?
I don't think so.
It was the Northridge earthquake. It was huge. It was like right before I moved out to LA. And like the freeways had collapsed, and like the 5 freeway, the 405, and people are just like, it's going to take us 50 years to rebuild this. It's going to take us 50 years. Wild. Then they hired private contractors. They go, you build this,
right?
You build it to code, and there will be an incentive for you finishing early. It was done in a year. It was done in
50 years.
And they're still going. They're still it's not like they built some piece of crap. They built it to code. They did it fast. It can be done.
It can be done.
But the government's like, oh, we need these roads to fail after 5 years so we can keep these people employed to fix the road. And it's this horrible
because they vote, and that union it needs to work. And like you said, we've done okay considering it's 200 years into this experiment, this grand experiment that is the United States, and we've accomplished so much. But you do get the sense that the wheels are beginning to fall off the bus, because we have written so many checks, we've overextended ourselves. We're sending another $33 billion to the Ukraine, that this is going to collapse on itself. There's no way this inflation that we're seeing, that was not, no, there's going to be no inflation, it's going to be transitory. Oh no, it's here, but it's a good thing. If people don't pay attention to these things, to these changing, the amount of people that aren't seeing these warning signs about the collapse of what's going to happen in this country, that we need to get back on track and base things in reality, get government out of these things. That's, to me, I know every generation feels that way, but that, to me, looking at this as compared to in the past, that's what scares me about all of this, is that there are people that are still on the Titanic sinking, going, everything's fine, and you're like, this is not fine. There's a lot of problems here that are going to be catastrophic.
I'll say this before I hit the dismount. It's been a great show. I'm so glad you had me on. Everybody needs to watch this. There's two choices. As a species, with humanity, there's always like, oh, we need to go over there. We need to explore that. Oh, look, there's a new continent. We can go. This is it now. This is the globe.
Yeah.
You can put more people in Alaska. You can fill up the empty spaces. That's one way. Or you can go out into space and go, okay,
Right.
we're going to colonize Mars and blah, blah, blah. If we stay here, I guarantee you there's a large group of people going, this is not sustainable. We need less people.
Yeah.
If we're going to stay here, there's way too many people, and they're going to have to figure out a way to either get us to stop reproducing, or they're going to have to figure out a way to get rid of a bunch of us.
Mm-hmm.
It's a binary choice.
Yeah.
And it's weird. I saw this article written in like 2014 in the New York Times that said like men's sperm count has dropped 50% since like 1977.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
So we either have too many people or we got to get going. I want to get going.
Yeah, I think we have too many of the wrong people. I'm all for dividing up the planet, and at some point, and we'll talk about that on a later date. The prospect of a civil war or a civil divorce, where at some point ideas we have are so inconsistent. You're like, I don't know if we can function anymore with people that are so different than us and how we think. Like as a country, we're not unified anymore.
Here's the question that I always pose to those, and I talk about this on my podcast, which is also called The Loftus Party. Ask your left-leaning friends. So what happened to San Francisco? Like,
yeah, exactly,
there's no conservative movement. There's no real Republican pushback. That's a liberal town. That's a Democrat town. Why isn't it that? Why isn't that a utopia?
Yeah, I've asked that, and what I get back is some blaming on, well, when Trump was in or Bush was in, and he cut this, and it's just nonsense. I did some of my biggest cases at the bureau out of San Francisco, and I got to see the decline as I visited that state, that state and that city, and yeah, it's clear to me what the problem is. It's the enablement of the drugs and homelessness, and you're not helping these people. You're just not helping them. But it makes them feel good.
Maybe if we raise taxes, taxes and
that's the answer.
Money. I gotta bounce.
All right, man. Yeah, Mike, I really appreciate it. Throw your plugs. So the loftusparty.com. Where can they find you on Twitter? I know it's at Loftus Party, right? On Twitter.
Everything is the Loftus Party. All platforms. Follow, like, subscribe. Don't forget to hit that bell button.
Smash the like button. All right, cool, man. It's been awesome talking to you, and I hope we can finish our conversation sometime soon.
Have a good one.